What is going on, YouTube? This is Jim back with another video today talking about Halo Infinite. We finally got our hands on some gameplay and I have to talk about it because I'm a Halo fan. So where I actually wanted to start this video was to go back in time to the end of Halo 5, which is what we're looking at here. And recall that Halo 5 had a somewhat controversial ending, I guess, as we lost the war. Spartan Locke, definitely not a fan favorite among people who were expecting to play as the Master Chief. But at the end, Cortana ultimately rebuilt under the Promethean image and basically declares martial law on the entire galaxy. And what she does, if you recall, is she opens up all of these giant portals that bring out these guardians up from the ashes of most major planets, Earth definitely included. And if you recall how the game ends, and we're actually getting up to it now, is there's small tribes of people left. You see them out living basically by campfire because major cities have been completely overrun, completely under rule now. Humanity is essentially on the run, living in caves and, you know, little streams, and like clearly these guys aren't like hanging out. They're hiding in a rock somewhere. If you recall at the end, Chief lands side by side with Spartan Locke, which was an interesting moment because the two had a lot of friction, needless to say, during their time in Halo 5. And at the end, Catherine Halsey, the creator of Cortana and the mastermind behind the Spartan program, walks up to Spartan 117 and they reconnect. And
it took you long enough?
She goes, "Oh, it took you long enough," and then fade to black, and that's it. Now, there was a little bit of bonus at the end. I don't think this video has it, and it's not that important, showing Cortana laughing and whistling as all the Halos start to come back to life. Now, that was the end of Halo 5. Halo Wars 2, which I don't have a video for, but there's really not a lot to show here, features Captain Cutter taking down the Banished. And the Banished were a rebel group that was formed after the Great Schism. If you remember, the Great Schism took place during Halo 2 and Halo 3 when the Brutes and the Elites fought over kind of who the Covenant really was. Well, they didn't show it in that game, but ultimately a group of Brutes went off on their own, becoming the Banished. And in Halo Wars 2, Captain Cutter fights off and defeats Atriox, the leader of the Banished. And at the end of Halo Wars 2, they beam back to what seemingly is now the end of the Halo 5 timeline, in which Cortana is now taking over everything. They come face to face with the Guardian, and we cut to black. So Halo Infinite picks up in a very odd place. Picks up, I'm going to pause it right here. Picks up 167 days after we lost. Let me back up just a smidge so we can look at those words. The question is on a lot of people's minds, and from here on out, this is total Jim speculation. This is a Halo superfan who's read pretty much every Halo book that's ever come out. I have read Halo Bad Blood, which does continue the story of Spartan Buck after the events of Halo 5, trying to recover some artifacts from a rebel faction of human society to use against Cortana, unsuccessfully, mostly, for the most part. But Halo's doing a very bad thing here, and this is something that a lot of people dislike. This is something that I'm not particularly fond of, but I understand, and this is this transmedia universe that they have implemented. So what they're expecting you to do, the fan, is to have played Halo Wars 2, Halo 5, and then have read books or comics or whatever digital media that isn't in a game so you can understand what's happening at this point, which I am not a big fan of. But here we are. It's intentionally vague, 167 days after we lost. You could argue with the days are after we lost the war to Cortana, although I would argue that was practically instant. You could argue is 167 days after this rogue group of the Banished post-Atriox, led by, I have his name written down here somewhere, War Chief Escharum. You'll see him at the end of this trailer. Maybe they come back and fight and we lose again. Either way, we are basically jumping into a story that has already begun. Master Chief clearly has been outfitted with some new armor. During one of the scenes, they show him kind of in this pod and in stasis being like retrofitted, and they talk about, you know, despite all the armor in the world, it's still basically a man that has to power the machine, and they want you to feel like you're the chief, which, I mean, everybody does anyway. I don't really know what the purpose of that piece of it was, but they're showing that Chief, somehow, the UNSC has managed to get a foothold somehow. I don't know how. And managed to get the Chief there, have him rebuilt. He now has new, awesome, epic armor. I'm assuming this is like Mjolnir, like Mark 8. I don't know what number we're up to by now. I know he had at least 5, so who knows where he's at. Very, very, very good luck on him. I would argue this is my absolute favorite Chief armor. You'll notice a big upgrade, though. He now has a hook shot on his left arm. Something that I don't know how I feel about. UNSC, definitely known for their space age weaponry, known for their fascination with Covenant weaponry. Clearly a Promethean propelling system, like in the UNSC Infinity. We see a lot of abilities that they have that include things like hard light and a lot of the plasma that the Covenant likes to use. And it's interesting that, you know, we are going to basically just skip all that, and we're just going to have new Chief armor with a grappling hook. It just doesn't seem like, of all the tech available, that that's something they would want to have. So the plot, I guess, of this game seems how this War Chief of the Banished has somehow invaded a Halo ring. You are on a Halo ring. I'm not sure which one it is. There are many. I think that's something a lot of people don't understand. There's many, many, many Halo rings. We're always finding new ones. So Chief is on this ring, and he is going to try to save the day once again. Clearly, he doesn't want the ring to fire. What the ring will do is eradicate all life, and maybe it's a play on Cortana trying to keep humanity safe. I'm going to go ahead and pause it here for a second. Maybe it's a play on Cortana trying to keep humanity safe with her philosophy of basically, you know, nurturing humanity in this very, very oppressive way because we're too naive, and she really has a strong affinity for John, Spartan 117, and maybe she feels like she's going to protect him. That was kind of the trail off of Halo 5. Remains to be seen. What we're looking at here, though, is yet another Halo ring where you are now given the options to take out this gun battery. And now we get to see some of the open world gameplay. You'll notice some key things here. You could see basically your par time to beat the level, your difficulty. I am not entirely sure what these things mean. I assume there's some sort of collectibles in the game. It is an open world game after all, so you can best believe there's going to be something to pick up. The nice thing is you could do these in any order that you want. You'll notice that this is the TAC map. They do not show us the upgrade tab nor the database. I'm dying to know what is inside this upgrade tab. Maybe one day we'll find out. Obviously, when the game comes out, maybe they'll have some more gameplay to reveal some more of that upgrades. But you can expect that Chief is going to find something, some new piece of gear, some new piece of weaponry, or something that's going to make him a little bit more of a lean, mean fighting machine. So that remains to be seen exactly what we're going to get there. But we do finally get a look at this open world area. And it's a really, really beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. I can't wait to explore and check out this world. It's a major departure from any Halo we've had that are very corridor shooter. While you could argue that Halo 5 probably had the most width of a map in terms of various routes to go on, this game takes it to an entirely new level. We're getting to see some of the open world areas you can explore. And this is where Chief jumps out of his Warthog and he goes to work. Now, I want to draw your attention to, and this is going to start happening fast, but I'm going to talk you through some of the weapons that we see. First, we see Chief using his tried but true assault rifle. Don't see much in the iron sights department here. He does manage to switch over to a Mark 50 sidekick pistol. And from here on out, all these weapons, with the exception of one, is entirely new to this game. I did a little bit of research online to see if I could find out more about them. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to. I'll pause it here for a second so I can catch up. UNSC is always refining their weaponry. They're always refining how we use our technology to fight back. It's kind of odd, based on everything I said, with humanity kind of on the run from Cortana, that they would have the ability to go and reforge new, more powerful weapons, but it's a game. They have to have new stuff. So you saw the Chief using a Mark 50 sidekick, which is a new pistol that is very, very different than the tactical pistol he used exclusively, pretty much, as most people did in the early Halos, particularly Halo Combat Evolved. You then see him pick up this thing, which is a V878 Commando, which looks to be like a variant of the SAW weapon that we saw inside of Halo 4 and Halo 5. One thing I want to draw your attention to, I'm going to go ahead and start playing it again here, is this seems to have limb damage. You notice that Brute running down, and I'm going to go ahead and replay that little piece here again so you can see it. As the Brute is running down the ramp, he shoots the Brute in the leg, and the Brute stumbles. He falls forward, losing his balance. He does a pretty nice headshot afterwards, but you could see that it looks like there's going to be some limb damage, definitely some more head damage. It looks like we'll see how far that this system actually goes. Here's a new piece of technology, the drop wall. Very similar to the shield that we had in Halo 3, with one key exception. You can shoot out of it. If you recall, the Halo shield in 3 was more like a melee box. And basically, you'd put that thing down and it was a bubble, and you would just melee enemies because they couldn't shoot in. This is going to allow you to shoot out, and I think that's a great, great change. There he just picked up yet another gun. We're going to see him use the Ravager here in a second. Now, the Ravager was teased a little bit in Halo 5. This is definitely a major rework with a much, much more defined blade on the front. We are definitely still seeing a lot of heavy Covenant-based weapons. There's not really a lot of Promethean weapons here. Promethean typically more red, more like orangey, like fire-type weapons. As a matter of fact, you're not going to see any of those. I suspect this is an early level. This may be the very first level of the game, and typically what they do is they like to phase those heavier Promethean weapons in later in the game. So we may see something along those lines. Here you see the Chief switch over to the notorious Pulse Carbine. Definitely a very different variant than the version we saw before. Back in Halo 5, this was a semi-automatic weapon. Here it's full auto. He's just going basically ham with this. And maybe it is a 3-round burst and they're shooting it very, very rapidly, but it's a lot slower than the methodical shot of the other one we had before. Then we switch over to the Mangler. The Mangler was prominently featured in Halo 3. It's one of the Brute weapons of choice. They've done a really good job of really accentuating each of the shells inside the cylinder. Obviously, it's new graphics, better technology, and let me go ahead and pause this here. It's better technology, obviously, like in terms of the Xbox processing power, but it's nice to see the revolvers roll around. I assume on reload, you may actually see him slip some shells into that, which would be really, really cool. And then we get into this grappling hook. I want to rewind this a little bit because it's going a little faster than I could talk. I want you to notice two things about the grappling hook. Number one, when the Chief looks up to use it, there's no indicator that says tether here, like a lot of other games do, where they kind of hard code in this tethering process where you can only attach your rope to certain areas. They got rid of that. As a matter of fact, the Chief just looks up and just whips it, and it magically just connects to the flat side of a bottom piece of road or bridge or something. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It actually almost comes off like a sticky kind of grappling hook. It's not a traditional grappling hook, which is a little odd. The second thing you're going to notice here, which is definitely something very different for this game, is you can actually pull energy canisters to you with the grappling hook and then immediately throw them as weapons. He actually also grapple hooks to an enemy, kind of like what the Doomslayer did in Doom Eternal with the shotgun, where he's going to grapple on and do like a super elbow to kill an elite through his shield in basically one hit. And I'm curious to see kind of how that plays out in the game. I'm curious to see if that means that we're going to be able to pull weapons to us, if there's going to be more puzzle-based things where you have to do levers, or how far does this thing go? What kind of upgrades does it have? Will you be able to tether onto a Warthog in multiplayer and spin it around really fast, like something we've seen in Just Cause with the grapple hook? And I don't know. But you're going to see a little bit of more grappling hook kind of interspersed here. And then you're also going to notice that the Chief picked up the last weapon that we have yet to see in the game. This is a new shotgun. This is a CSQ-40 Bulldog, which seems to have a lot more range than standard shotguns, unless they're playing on very, very easy difficulty. He's hitting guys at a pretty significant range, and he's able to take them out with relative ease. It's got a really nice vertical foregrip there, so it seems like a very stable shot, and it's got a nice definitive thud to it, which I really like. That's something I really have to commend this demo on. The audio was really, really crisp. It sounded really, really intense. And it definitely made the weapons feel much more distinct than we've seen in the past. I think you could argue that a lot of previous Halos, with the exception of Halo 4, which to me is the gold standard in Halo audio, a lot of those weapons felt very tinny. They had a very tinny, chintzy, light kind of feel to them. These weapons felt like they had more heft. And if anything else, maybe because of the removal of sprint in this game, maybe with the addition of this grappling hook, or maybe with the addition of some of these other mechanics, the gameplay is going to slow down a little bit, but it's going to make you feel more impactful. It's going to make you hit a lot harder. So the last little bit of this trailer here, and we'll wrap up this video, is, as I mentioned, this is the War Chief, who is now talking about how humanity is doomed. They own control of the Halo ring. Once they fix it, they're firing it. Too bad, so sad. You see just little brief snippets of like how decimated the UNSC army is, and you see brief snippets of just how alone they are. No mention of Cortana, no mention of the Guardians, no mention of any kind of chief AI, no voice in the back of his head talking to him. Even though there's a slot in the back for that chip slot for his AI, we don't hear anybody. Is this truly the first adventure where Chief's alone? I've read some stuff that maybe that's not true, but who knows for sure. As this trailer wraps up, though, you're going to get a long, nice diatribe of this guy basically telling you how powerful the Banished are, even though you've already destroyed them, with the help of 3 Spartans, of course, during Halo Wars 2, but how powerful the Banished are and how they can't wait to fire the ring, and they believe in the one true, covenant God, and all this nonsense that we had to deal with, the religious war stuff we had to deal with in the original trilogy. So, a lot to take in here, guys. I did my best to unpack it all for you, give you a play-by-play. I'm very excited for this game. I don't know if I'm in the minority here. Some people have argued they thought the textures didn't look that great. Some people argued that they thought the gameplay was a little slower than it should have been. I'm on the fence with the grappling hook. I'm not going to lie. That's something that I don't necessarily believe is something we need in this game, but they could convince me. I guess you don't have to use it, right? I'll be really curious to see what happens with the Chief going forward, and particularly with a lot of these new weapons. This is just a small sample of some of the UNSC and some of the Covenant-based weaponry that we've seen. I suspect if they took this much care, there being 343, into making these new weapons, you're most likely going to see a lot of new Promethean stuff. You will guarantee the Prometheans will be in this game. Unless they totally scrap the Cortana plot, and we're just supposed to pretend that that doesn't happen anymore. Based on where this timeline begins, though, in terms of a timeline, this does actually occur after the events of everything you've seen up to date. So this isn't like any kind of weird flashback or weird sideways universe. Halo's going to have to do a lot to convince people that this is the right direction they want to take. But I could tell you what, the models and the graphics and the new Chief suit, I think, are going to draw a lot of people in. So there you guys have it, a deep dive look of the Halo Infinite gameplay. Leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on some of the new weapons, some of the new gameplay modes. What do you think? Are you excited, or is this 343's last stand? Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.